You do your front double like Nate Diaz.
This is the coolest way. Yeah. All right, what's up you guys? Today we're gonna be talking about our pre-workout stack. So what supplements we take, what they're for, and also what the dosages that are recommended are, so you can see if your pre-workout is underdosed, which it probably is.
All right, and before we get a comment of someone absolutely spazzing in the comments saying all supplements are a scam, all you need to do is lift heavy and eat protein and drink butter. Yeah, man, you're gonna get most of the results from that. Nobody's saying that the effect size on any of these things is huge. There's no conflict of interest here. Trust me, no one is paying us any money to say anything. We have no sponsors around here. I think we make about 60 bucks a month on the YouTube right now, so raking in the big bucks. The whole sentiment online that supplements are overrated is true and very rightfully came about from an era when supplements were drastically overstated in their effect size, if not flat out lying about what they do, right? Like test boosters, kind of fake. People are saying your creatine, or what was it? Cell Tech was going to turn you into Ronnie Coleman. It was just a bunch of juiced up bodybuilders telling you that their specific whey protein shake or mass gainer is what got them that way. So huge overpromising. Massive price gouging, overpromising at best, lying at worst, price gouging, underdosed formulas for even the things that do work. But you know, a lot of supplements do have a good amount of evidence behind them, like rigorous evidence behind them for small effect sizes. So if you are someone who's interested in the accumulation of little things you can leverage to better your result, this is something that you might find interesting. But that being said, if you eat a well-structured diet, you hydrate well, and you sleep well, you don't have to have a goddamn thing beforehand to have a damn good workout. We're talking about marginal improvements at best. You know, you do that, eat, sleep, and hydrate well. Maybe you like caffeine, maybe you don't. We're gonna touch on that a little bit in a moment, because that's kind of the big pre-workout ingredient. You make that decision for yourself, you're not really missing out, right? Gas station caffeine pills will get you most of the way there. If you like nerding out about this stuff like we do, we can talk about these little marginal gains, right? You get these people that say, oh, basically creatine is the only thing with research. That just isn't true. So plain and simple, that's not true. There is solid research for different outcomes for different supplements that we might want to leverage, be that, we're going to get to it, kind of the three things we might be looking for out of a pre-workout being quality of pump, focus, and effects on performance. Yeah, the list of performance impacting supplements, it's a pretty short list of things with really rigorous evidence, but to say that creatine is the only thing proven to work is probably a disingenuous representation of all of the research that's out there. And we're gonna include a hefty amount of anecdotal experience as well, because we rotate things into, try them out just as a kind of ongoing experiment. Not that it matters a ton, because these are marginal gains, but if we can add little things to leverage us in the direction that we want, we may as well. Especially if you buy these things from something like bulk supplements or like NutriCost or Now supplements, where you buy individual ingredients rather than buying like a pre-formulated blend where you're paying for their athlete promos and their sponsorships of athletes and their branding and their marketing. It doesn't actually end up being all that expensive of a hobby to fiddle around with. You know, like a 6-month supply of creatine cost us like 35 bucks. It's not exactly the most expensive thing, though it is not necessary at all. Yeah, so mixing together our own pre-workout stack, so to speak, is just kind of an ongoing fun experiment for Kirsten and I. We're taking a little bit more of a minimalist lens of recent, but it's kind of something just to fiddle with for general entertainment. See which things have a effect size large enough to justify keeping them in, to justify the price, because it's not as though we're made of money, even though this is not exactly the most expensive thing to do in the world. We're still cognizant of that. We'll phase one thing in, we'll phase another out. As we talked about, we have those three kind of areas of action to build your own pre-workout, where we have the pump, performance, and focus. And there's probably quite a few things that you guys might rate if you are a supplement guy. If you're not a supplement guy, not the video for you, not a big deal. We just think it's kind of interesting. there's probably some things you rate quite highly that aren't included. Like I said, we're in a kind of a minimalist period because Kirsten's kind of dabbling in these things one at a time, seeing how she responds, adding them in, adding them out. And I'm kind of just following alongside her because these things are very marginal. And there's a couple of boxes that we started out with are the ones that I kind of check year round no matter what. And then we have built from there. There's a high chance if there's something you guys like, at some point I've dabbled with it. I've done a lot of experimenting just to see if there's little things I can eke out, small improvements in performance, and if not improvements in performance, improvements in consistency. Just like a good warm-up, I think a good pre-workout isn't gonna make your good workouts any better. It might make your worst workouts a little bit less bad and kind of improves our baseline just marginally. I like paying attention to these things. I think it's interesting. So it's been like an ongoing experiment for Kirsten and I. Which also brings me to the question, and I am actually genuinely curious. This isn't engagement bait. I am curious, of those 3 categories, do you guys have any ingredients that we don't mention? So we'll get through them, see if yours is mentioned, if this is an area of interest for you. I know there's a lot of focus-related supplements that were not going to be included. Pumps, we're kind of checking a lot of the basics, but I'd be curious if you guys have one anecdotally you swear by. Performance, again, I'd be very curious. This is kind of like a base level of those 3 to some degree, so I'd be really curious if there's any that you guys swear by and make regular use of. Again, in this ongoing experiment that we're all trying to leverage towards getting jacked and getting strong, any little thing we can do to tilt our physiology moving in one direction. Some of us like that accumulation of marginal gains approach, and some of us like that truly minimalistic approach of like, hey, I'm not gonna worry about flipping the small rocks at all. I'm gonna focus on doing a really, really good job flipping the big rocks. Both produce great results. I like both. I think there's periods of the year that I'll lean into one or the other because this has been 10 years of doing this nonsense, and you got to keep things interesting, right? Like you got the big rock guys who are like, no, it's just nutrition, train, sleep. Do a really, really good job. All your thoughts should be doing better on those 3 things. Yields great results. The accumulation of marginal gains guys are like, oh, like this little thing I can do. It's not much money. It's not much sweat off my back. Why wouldn't I create these little areas of leverage? We all probably fall somewhere in between and probably all could benefit from using the other person's lens every now and then to hone in our approach, because ultimately what we think is the cooler philosophy doesn't really matter. It's getting results that matters, as controversial of a statement as that is. Camp does not matter, results matter.
Okay, as Sam mentioned, we kind of split this video into 3 categories. So first we'll go over the performance side of things. So the first supplement we're going to talk about is creatine, but we're not going to talk about it because you guys have probably already heard that like 3 million times. I'll throw Sam's short input about it at the end of the video if you're interested in it, but I don't think we need to talk about creatine. All right, so the second one we're going to talk about is beta-alanine. Research supports beta-alanine improving exercise performance in high-intensity exercise lasting 1 to 10 minutes. So like hypertrophy training, strongman training where you need like intense intervals, or even if you're a power lifter, you arguably should be doing some hypertrophy training, so therefore this is relevant to you. So it's not really relevant to singles or sets of 5, things like that. So beta-alanine is the limiting factor in muscle carnosine synthesis, which is carnosine acts in your muscles as a buffer, so it resists changes in pH. So as you use your muscles and you work out, the pH tends to drop, but if you have enough carnosine, it can buffer that drop, because when your muscles get too acidic, then they don't contract as well.
Is it a buildup of hydrogen ions? Is that what it is? Okay. So one thing to mention before we move on from the beta-alanine, right, that kind of addresses the mechanism of action, the energy thresholds or work thresholds for which it might be useful or might not be useful. We touched on the fact that even though powerlifting does not fall within the kind of straining duration that is relevant, you still should be doing your bodybuilding work afterward for the most part, unless you're already filling out your weight class, which just about nobody is. Offers benefits for many, more for like a strongman potentially than a powerlifter, but it's still something to look into. You might come across online some people being a little bit more critical of beta-alanine supplementation, saying that you don't really get the effects until we reach this accumulation of some beta-alanine levels in the body. It's like 130 grams or some shit. And it's a bit rigorous to work your way up to that some body concentration, meaning that you need to take it every day, maybe multiple times a day, including your rest days, and that the marginal increases in performance are not going to be worth how rigorous that is. I think that's overlooking the fact that it is in animal-based proteins. So again, we're not starting from empty reservoirs here. If you eat like 2 pounds of chicken a day, we're already at 3 grams of beta-alanine, which is kind of the clinical dose to begin with. So we're going up to the upper end by supplementing 3 grams on top of that. The rate at which it declines intramuscularly is relatively slow.
It's like 2 to 4% per week. So if you miss a day, it's really not the end of the world.
Yeah, so presumably, again, if you just like the creatine, if you make a regular habit of this, you will climb in those. You don't necessarily need a loading phase. It'll just take a little bit longer before you start getting noticeable effects, but it will climb in concentration within your body, and then you'll get the effects. Again, it's just a marginal benefit. If you hate the tingles, don't take it. Not a big deal. I forget what it is. There's something you can do to mitigate those. I'm not smart enough to remember what it is, but I'm stealing the glory here because Kirsten is actually the one who has done the majority of the research on the mechanistic side of this, as far as like also the rate at which it declines, whether like a loading phase is necessary. She's the one who has a degree in molecular and cellular biology. I am bordering on illiterate, but I get to steal the glory on this one. Yeah, I don't really worry about that. If you don't like the tingles, it probably is a net negative. If that's going to throw off your focus, it's like if that's something you hate, the performance benefits here are small enough to where you shouldn't suck it up. That's very much a no-go. But for the most part, I think those
less.
Yeah,
because
true.
If you're already eating red meat or chicken, you can take a little bit below what makes you tingle, and then, you know, you're still getting a little bit above that recommended dose, or within that, higher up within that range of the recommended dose, and you're not getting the tingles, but you're potentially getting more benefit from it.
Yeah, and those paired with caffeine is kind of like just the meat and potatoes of things with research behind them for performance based on different energy thresholds, based on different outcomes. There are other things. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say about what other things you might find benefit from. But on the performance side of things, you generally get into that creatine, then caffeine, although the caffeine dosage to begin seeing performance benefits is relatively high. It's like 500 milligrams or 600 milligrams, a dosage that probably would throw off your sleep and have some big negative effects. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that lower doses of caffeine probably also have performance enhancing effects. They're just smaller in magnitude and harder to observe with statistical significance in the research, but they still probably fucking do something. And then beta-alanine, again, energy, time duration, specific, but definitely does have potential benefits. Shane German, a strongman coach I like quite a bit, mentioned, he's like, yeah, just like strongman definitely falls within those quite a bit, quite often. So if you're not, like if you take this serious, why aren't you taking your creatine and beta-alanine pre-workout? It's relatively cheap. It's just something to stay on top of. It's not a lot of work. Why not pick up those marginal gains? And again, some people take the more big rock philosophy, and that works really well for some very good lifters, so I can't knock it too much. But I fall into that camp. Why not take them? You know what I mean? They help.
All right, next we're gonna talk about pump ingredients. As you guys may know, I'm doing a foray into more bodybuilding style training, which has been really fun, and playing around with some more pump oriented ingredients. So I'm gonna talk about arginine and citrulline. Both of these, really the evidence is just, not just, but it is just blood flow and circulation. They say that's not really beneficial, but
yeah, that's like a point of debate, right? Like Dr. Mike is hanging his hat on, like, that's the one thing he kind of disagrees with the evidence-based crowd that he kind of hangs with. They're all like, hey, we don't really have any direct evidence that pump is all that important for growth. Dr. Mike is saying, like, give it a couple of years. I would not be surprised, not surprised, I expect that to come out. And, you know, we've got some reason to believe that metabolic stress or metabolite buildup within our muscles is a separate driver. I need to stop staring at the table. Is a separate driver of hypertrophy to some degree, right? You could look at the efficacy of blood flow restriction training, where on paper that doesn't really quite check the boxes of like proximity to failure. Or a lot of the protocols we would affect are effective for muscle gain from this more mechanical tension, volume, strict mediated hypertrophy centric meta nowadays. We still get good results from blood flow restriction training, maybe suggesting that that buildup of metabolites within the muscle is an independent driver to some degree. And if it's not an independent driver, which I suspect at least a little bit it is, it doesn't really matter because I still think correlationally it tends to be good for muscle growth. And let me expand on that, right? Yeah, could we do a junk workout where we get a sick pump? Like, could we organize a workout to get a sick pump that also definitely doesn't fit the criteria for what will get us jacked? Yes, I see people do it all the time. I had a great workout, I got a great pump. It's like, that's probably not the only criteria. But that being said, if you had two identical twins, both of them did heavy sets of 8 to 12 where they were nearing or reaching failure for a couple of rounds, varied their exercises, they did the same workout. It's a good workout, we know that. The one that got a better pump was probably poised to grow more from that workout. He probably slept better, he probably hydrated better, his electrolyte balance is better, and his nutrition was better. So if you're never getting a pump, there might be something to be addressed there, whether it be your hydration, whether it be poor circulation. There is probably something to be said there. And getting a pump is sick, right? So whether these pump ingredients just make the workout more fun or whether they probably maybe increase a little bit of a driver, who the hell knows? But one thing I really do like about pump products is that they make my joints feel really nice. When I get like a bit of a pump in my quads, suddenly my knees feel great. When my quads are cold, my knees don't feel great. Very much the same with my elbows, very much the same with my shoulders. So if I can take something that lets me get that pump a little bit quicker, I can get into my heavy work a little bit faster. I'm inclined to believe good circulation is good.
Blood flow, good. Okay, so first we're gonna talk about arginine, like we talked about, blood flow, vascular function. People take it for erectile dysfunction. People take it to lower their blood pressure. All good things. The recommended dose I think is 3 to 6. Yeah, 3 to 6 grams. So check your pre-workouts.
One more note, arginine tastes like shit. Citrulline is just like this nice little like sour, bitter flavor. You put it with some Mio or some other kind of flavoring, not too bad. Arginine tastes like a bag of ass.
Yeah, it's really bad. Definitely, if you do what we do and you buy the supplements all separately and you put them into something, you gotta have some sort of like Mio or like flavoring to it. Otherwise, it's
you gotta go heavy with it to drown out that arginine. I bought non-flavored amino acids one time. Hellacious, terrible. Matt, tell the fine people about citrulline.
Okay, so citrulline, there's some evidence that it can reduce perceived fatigue, increase the number of reps you can get on a set, and decrease soreness, but there's not a consensus that it does all of that. The consensus is the blood flow and circulation. I did find a meta-analysis pretty complimentary that it does do all of those things. This meta-analysis looked at only studies where they used the suggested dose or higher, so only 3 grams or higher, and they only used studies where they also had a placebo group. I have a sneaking suspicion that some of the reason there's not a consensus is studies underdosing the people in the studies and then being like, well, we gave them 1 gram and it didn't do anything. And it's like, yeah, that's not gonna do shit. So I did find a decent meta-analysis that did say it does help with those things. So I just figured I would throw that in there. And then the dose, similar to everything else, just slightly higher dose, 6 to 8 grams.
Yeah, and as far as other things, like we talk about these 3 categories. Other things that I do that Kirsten doesn't do, right? I have beetroot powder every day, blah, 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 increases nitric oxide, blah, 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 vasodilator, blah, blah, blah. I am a big fat man and need to watch my blood pressure. Do I probably also get better pumps from that? I'm guessing so, but it's more about not dying. My kidney appreciates it. Similarly, that's one of the reasons that I'm very inclined to take these pump products, even though I'm not a bodybuilder. I don't think they're going to be that, I don't really think they're going to add much in terms of hypertrophy outcomes, because yes, hypertrophy is important for getting stronger. Getting bigger is a very potent way to get stronger. I don't think they're going to drive that, but I like how it makes me warm up a little bit faster, and I like lowering my blood pressure because good circulation is good. The other one we gave a shot was glycerol, which I think is a naturally occurring alcohol. I want to say it's just like hydrophilic, so it draws water into your muscles, which is cool because it's a separate mechanism to drive the pump compared to like the standard vasodilators. So it's like, oh, that should like synergize for an even sicker pump. And like, I want to say like the Gorilla Mind supplements use it.
I think it's pretty common, yeah.
Yeah, I bought the, it's one of like the next standard ingredients if you're really trying to maximize your pump. I bought it. I bought the one from Bulk Supplements. I did not read the reviews because Bulk Supplements is either the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. Oh my God, the particles are so big. They don't mix at all. It is gnarly. I knock it back and then there's just a paste at the bottom that I gotta try to chug. Don't know if it works. I have not been chugging the paste very regularly. So the jury is out on glycerol. If you guys have tried it, let me know. Kirsten has also told me to look at the camera. I have very awkwardly been staring at the table this whole time. Could not tell you why. On to the next one, boys. One last thing. Jump cut. One last thing. Honestly, this could be thrown into any of them. It's not really a supplement. It's a lifestyle factor that I think is very important regardless of your goal. It helps with your focus. It helps with your performance. It helps with your pumps. And that is managing your electrolytes well. Sodium is of utmost importance because we lose it through sweat. Active people probably need a bigger intake. Monitor your blood pressure. Some people are more responsive, less responsive, blah, blah, blah. Feel it out. Potassium also being a huge factor there. You can do pure salt or you can do light salt, which is a potassium-sodium blend. And if you want to include that in your pre-workout, you want to include that in your intra-workout, which we'll touch on in a future video. Holy fuck, this is gonna be too long. You want to include your post-workout. Awesome. That's still more of a lifestyle configuration. Like, I think calling that a pre-workout ingredient would be a little bit annoying, but it is. It helps with all of them. So, all right, I've been told to be more concise. Thankfully, a bunch of our listeners just put us on in the background while they cook or eat their meals like the handsome chads that they are. And of course, they have to eat their high-protein meals, their bowls of meat of choice and rice and veggies.
And beta-alanine.
And they need something to listen to while they eat these chadly meals. So it doesn't matter how long fucking winded we are. Last category is focus. Caffeine being a big one here. Also a potential driver of the performance side of things. Probably a detriment to the pump side of things, as I believe it is a vasoconstrictor in your muscles, but I believe it is a vasodilator in your brain. Don't quote me on that one, but that's why.
I believe I read that too when I was.
That's why it can help with headaches. That's why I said Midol. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah. Look at me go.
If you're a woman, you'll know what Midol is.
Ally of women, Sam Sheether. Yeah, it's good. It helps people. Some people respond well. Some people don't respond well. Kind of a mixed bag. Some people it throws off their focus because they're jittery. Some people feel like they're locked in, like it gives them tunnel vision. It's awesome. I am one of aforementioned people. You have to weigh it against your sleep, but it could potentially help your focus. All right.
Wait, let me sit down before I just start talking.
All right, similarly to caffeine, we have nicotine, right? Historically, nicotine has been viewed as the worst cousin of caffeine. A lot of that poor association. Yes, it's addictive, so is caffeine. Is it potentially a little bit more addictive? Depends on who you ask, to be honest. Historically, it's gotten a very bad rap because it came with other things that caused cancer. Now there's multiple ways to ingest nicotine that don't come with those things, and we can look at it a little bit more objectively. Shorter half-life than caffeine, which is cool. It means you can potentially have it a little bit closer to bedtime without it jacking up your sleep. Some people feel better with it, different mechanisms of action, yada, yada, yada. It's something you could play around with if you don't respond well to the caffeine or the caffeine jacks up your sleep. Obviously, be careful. Don't get addicted to nicotine because I told you some people use it as a pre-workout. It doesn't matter. It's worked quite well for Kirsten to swap her caffeine for nicotine. Hasn't really resulted in any withdrawal symptoms or anything like that. Just something that's like, a little bit more easy to leverage.
Yeah, especially training after work. Like if you're somebody who trains like 5 p.m., if you're taking 400 milligrams of caffeine at 5 p.m., that's probably going to fuck up your sleep unless you're Max and you go to bed at midnight.
No, it still messes up Max's sleep.
Oh, really?
Like Max just takes it as an L when he does have to have those caffeine late sessions. Like he just only uses it when he's like, yeah, I'm screwed in terms of sleep, but this session necessitates it, right? I hate how it feels. Makes me feel lightheaded. Wouldn't want to feel like that around training. I just hate it in general. Not my cup of tea. Kirsten's cup of tea. Just something that I figured would be worth mentioning. And then the last one, there's tons in this area. So if you guys have some, you know, if you're big alpha GPC type dudes, let me know. I think that's kind of interesting. I've kind of gone back and forth on it. The last one I have 2 capsules of L-tyrosine, which is a non-essential amino acid, which is used in the process of making epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. Right? When we're in a dopamine depleted state from having a long day, being very stressed, that tends to correlate with a loss of focus. So maybe taking this precursor of dopamine can help you if you have that kind of dopamine loss brain fog. And it can synergize pretty well. I speculate, who the hell am I? But I speculate it kind of synergizes pretty well with caffeine because caffeine can increase dopamine output. I think it increases dopamine receptor sensitivity, and I believe caffeine also binds to adenosine adenosine receptors, which is something that kind of rises with how tired you get. They can kind of affect that feeling of brain fog. Also has this interaction with dopamine receptors. So you kind of get this cool, maybe synergistic effect. I, as someone who's very high strung, often find myself struggling to focus because I've been stressing all day, not because I'm physically tired. And I find that combination of L-tyrosine plus caffeine to help me quite a bit with kind of knocking off that brain fog and being able to focus for a session. So figured I would mention that one. All right, guys. Long-winded video. It's going to be a learning process for these kind of co-research videos. Let us know if you want a little bit more of a deep dive. I have been mentoring Kirsten over here. She's been working with free clients for about a year, right? Never want it to be some kind of cheap cash grab where, ooh, I have demand and I'm just going to have people be secretly programmed by my wife. That's not really the point. It's more something Kirsten has been working as a physical therapist aide and also doing some in-person coaching. And I've been mentoring her on my methods for getting bigger and stronger for a good while now. And we figured another thing we could do was have her join me as a smart, well-educated person in terms of these research videos. If you have something you want us to deep dive on, let us know. I promise she'll get better at the camera speaking soon. Do you have any thoughts, m'lady?
Nope, that sounds good.
Dab it up.
So like other supplements on this list, they do recommend that you load creatine for like about a week with 10 times the dose you would usually take. And then after that, you can drop back to a regular daily dose. If you do that, you might shit yourself or you'll have to separate it and spread it out throughout the day. So you don't actually need to load it.
Well, the loading protocols also are assuming we're starting from a net like 0 intramuscular creatine stores, and a lot of our viewers are regular consumers of red meat, so you're not starting from empty a good bit of the time. Just daily supplementation is generally enough to get you there. Just get in the habit. Like we're talking about very small marginal gains, right? Like when we talk about there's some speculation that the benefits from creatine are more driven by the spike in intramuscular water retention than even the phosphocreatine system creatine stores, right? It might just be that, right? People talk about, oh, well, what about the increase in lean mass? It's like, well, water is registered as lean mass in a DEXA. So if it spikes intramuscular water, it by definition spikes lean mass.
Yeah.
Or we're talking about how, oh, well, those little increases in performance where maybe every now and then we would have got 8, but now we get 9, right? It's probably where it would show up. Those will add up in a better hypertrophy progression over time. Those small increases in performance will eventually lead to more muscle mass. Probably not like necessarily a driver of muscle gain though. But performance, it works. It's got a storied history. We don't recommend necessarily using a loading phase. Just think it's adding needless complexity. You could. There's a chance you're not starting from 0. Just get in the habit. Time of day does not matter very much, whether it's pre-workout, post-workout, as long as it's consistent, right? If we have it at night, those creatine stores stay full till the next day's workout and then refill. Like as long as the proximity to workout's the same as pre, intra, post, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. Just build the habit that leads to the highest adherence, because why not? It's cheap. If you take your training serious, why not just regularly have your creatine?